Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gothman. I'm stuck in COVID quarantine. I'm downstairs in my basement in my comfy chair, hanging out, working on the computer down here, doing some different things. One thing that's really good about quarantine is that the mail still works to a degree. So I'm still getting items coming to me, and I'm going to continue to review them. You know, I like to quest, I like to go out and shop and get the thing, but if I have to get it online, so be it. One thing that came in this week that I was really excited about was the child from The Mandalorian. I pre-ordered this back at the end of 2019, and it finally came out. It was one of a series of Mandalorian figures that they were going to promote. This is the one I was most interested in right off the bat. Even though it was the first one, I knew it was going to be the one that I wanted, and I think it was going to be the one that it was going to run away with that everybody wanted. So I'm very excited to review the child. So what is this particular one? The first one out. What is this? So first of all, this is a Mattel figure. Now that's interesting for Star Wars fans because a lot of Star Wars fans know through the Kenner years and beyond that recently with the acquisition of Star Wars to Disney, just before that, the major license that was out was Hasbro. And so Hasbro gets its hands into everything in the films. The major films, the major released items are Hasbro. And then a few other companies have some licenses, but the main figure line comes out through Hasbro. Hasbro is going to be releasing some child-oriented stuff from The Mandalorian, but the first one that came out when this launched, I believe it was originally a save on Walmart.com. Everybody thought it was fake because of the Mattel stamp, and I thought, well, The Mandalorian is actually not part of the Skywalker saga. It's something separate, so they could have done a separate license for that, because even though it's under the Disney umbrella, it's under the Lucasfilms umbrella, The Mandalorian is its own entity and is perfectly capable of having a separate license. You can't license all of Star Wars. You have to license each individual property and entity made under the company, etc., etc. So the Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau project gets something different. So I wasn't surprised that it could be Mattel, but it made me skeptical. But after I confirmed it, I decided to move forward with it. So luckily for me, it was a real thing. And this is the box that it came in. First thing I like that Mattel did that went the extra mile is that the box looks like the infant carrier case. So even the packaging in and of itself is a collectible item, and you don't have to take the packaging apart to get to it. This just has two twisty ties that keep the figure in and the plastic container that outlines it, but you could easily remove and take off the tape and the plastic container if you want to do that. I'm going to leave it glued on and everything. I'm just going to keep it like this. I may eventually throw this out, but for now, it's so easy to keep it, why not keep it? So I was really happy with that. The other thing that I was really excited about with this figure was it was originally billed as 13 inches tall. The scale of the child in the show is about 16 inches, 36 centimeters for everybody else in the world. But it's actually about 11 inches tall, which is cool. That's, I think, a perfectly decent size, but it has a slightly oversized head, which I like too. So that means that you could, in theory, remove the head, remove the hands, and make a to scale 16-inch version of this if you wanted to. The vinyl pieces will come off very easily, and you can do that. Right now, I believe I have a second one coming because I pre-ordered one through the Disney store and I pre-ordered one through Walmart.com. I don't think the Walmart.com one is coming till the end of May, so I have a second one. I may tear that apart and make a modification. But for now, I have this one, and I'm really happy with it, and I've already modified it slightly. But I wanted to show you guys what it looks like in proportion to me. I am 6'2", so you can get a good idea roughly of how big it is. But this is the item. And I'm holding it in front of me right now, so if I put it directly next to me, you can see it's larger than it is from my neck to head. So it's a really good size figure. If it's something for your own child, then it's a perfect size. You dress the kid up like the Mandalorian, or something to sleep with at night. The head is a squishy vinyl. It holds form beautifully. It's shaped beautifully. Keep it out of the sun. Don't let it get super hot. But it's shaped wonderfully, but it won't clunk and be damaging. The ears do bend and move, so this is beautiful. People are going to frickin' recast this already, I can tell. The detailing on the head and face is smoother than you'd expect. So it does have a texture. It does have a skin texture, which is fantastic. You can see it does have a very subtle paint job, which is good. But they've taken away a lot of the wrinkles in the face and the mouth, under the eyes. They've taken away, obviously, they've not added any hair, any fuzzies. So it's not 50 years old looking. It looks like a baby. It's a toy. But I have to say, the price tag on this runs $24.99. And at $24.99, this is probably the best toy I think I've ever seen Star Wars put out. And the fact that it came from Mattel is actually quite a shock, because I've really never been blown away by a Mattel figure before. The other thing that I like is the clothes on the back. It's like pleated, so it's actually accessed and then stitched together. Now, the collar is a separate piece. So if you look under there, the robe is one piece and the collar sits over it, which is also good if you're planning on taking it apart and making your own, because this is actually a fairly thin fabric. So if you wanted to replace this with something a little bit more burly but keep some of the fuzzies, you could retain a lot of this and make your own custom piece. You'll also notice that the hands are vinyl, just like the head, but the whole body, arms and all, is this beanbag material. It's filled with cotton, and it's got beanbag material in the base to make it stable to sit. Now, you'll notice mine, the arms are posed and held up. Do the arms pose? No, they do not. The reason they do that, and I'm going to show you why they do that, is because I've actually wrapped a posable wire around mine so that I could pose it for photographs, because I've already done that. I've also run it up his neck so that I can kind of pose the head just ever so slightly. So what I'm basically saying is, if you pick this up for $24.99, it's beautiful, it's photogenic, your kid can walk around with it, you can walk around with it. I mean, you're going to see a bunch of 40-year-old children like me running around just holding this thing like it's their precious. It's actually very comforting to hold. It's squishy, but it's like very like blanket-ish, like it, the way you feel about like your security blanket when you're a kid. It's something very soothing about holding the baby Yoda. I don't like calling it the child. I like calling it baby Yoda. But the detail on the face is striking. The eyes are deep and beautiful. They look like horse eyes, actually, which is really gorgeous. The ear detail is very, very nice. It's seamless, which I love. It's one molded piece. There's no seam line, so it displays beautifully from all angles. And as far as the actual arm detail, you can see where the wrists cut off, but I have wrapped some posing wire around. So if I wanted the thing to pose its arm down, if I wanted it to not bend at the wrist as it currently is and remold it, I also kind of gives them a little bit of shoulder. So how did I do that? I'm going to show you how I did that. So I'm going to stick him over here for a minute. Now, unfortunately, this is a mobile chair, and this is not going to sit so well. I don't want him to like just drop off like that, but hang tight. So what I utilize is one of these. This is, and if I bring it up close to you, you can see it. This is a bendable, reusable industrial tie, and you can get this in Home Depot. They come in, I think, 3 packs or something like that, but they bend. You just bend and pose it. It's got a plastic coating on it. It's just a posable wire on the inside with a nice rubber coating around the outside and little end caps. So what you do is, underneath the clothing, you simply wrap the wire around Yoda. I like to do it high-waisted. If you start from the back and you wrap it around twice, you'll start to see that you run out of room. So what I like to do is, I'm kind of going to make the rough shape, and then so this is essentially the shape. So you have a waist around, and you can cinch that up, or you can lip it and bend it a little bit in the front to kind of, or in the spine area, to give it kind of like a stabilizer for the head, because the head outweighs the whole body, being a piece of vinyl, and it kind of is like a bobblehead. So you can give it some structure so that it'll hold them up. And then these pieces, I just take and I wrap around the hand like that so that I can move and pose and bend the arm. They're really useful tools if you're trying to well, my wife uses them to measure the spine of her horse and things like that to create shapes. They're also really useful if you're cutting foam and trying to make an exact shape. They're pretty accurate, so they can hold some very accurate shaping. Also really good for measuring. They're just useful tools. Even something as stupid as wrapping it around like a light and then hanging it off of something. I think they're really useful to have. They're very, very cheap. I recommend picking them up, but this prevents you from needing to go through and gut your baby Yoda. You don't have to rip the thing apart. You can, you don't have to cut into the stitching. You can literally just wrap it. You can see how it is up by the neck there. You can literally just wrap it around the doll through the arms, as I stated. And because it kind of runs up the back of the tricep there, over in the shoulder area, it gives you something to bend it against and shape it against. So you can shape the arms and do little things. I think it's a really useful way to display your baby Yoda. Just remember you got to cinch it tight so that it doesn't bulge in obnoxious areas that you don't need. The dress robe piece does run about 1 inch longer than the base, so it will sit nice and comfortably, as it should, like on the show. My favorite component is that these hands are different. They're not just mirror images. So there's this little, like, as you would hold a cane or get a footing on something, you can use that. I actually like to turn this hand upward just for sake of argument. And then this is the force hand, which really kind of is cool because you can twist it and really, like, how are you doing the force? But it feels like he's reaching out and using the force, and it just has a very good look like in the show. And as you can see as I turn it, it just really has a great link up in terms of wherever you shoot it from. It looks great. And I've already done some photo shoots with this. And, so like just putting it in its crate just like that, having it reach out from the container, even if you wanted it to go a little wide, just kind of like that. You can even just subtly turning the head and creating that look. It'll just display so much nicer with that little add-on. And then you change, maybe you use the thing to stiffen the head up, have it look up a little bit, because he's always kind of doing one of these. And you just see even that little head tilt creates a very different look. It lights very well with the way they did this. So I'm a big fan of this toy. I can't imagine the 7-inch fully animatronic one being as good as this, because it's going to be too little. This at 11 inches is almost like a 1-to-1. You could strap this on a Mando costume and you're ready to rock and roll, man. So I'm a big fan of Mattel's work here. I think they did a great job. If you're a really hardcore builder, like I said, you can unstitch the clothing, you can save the collar, you can take off the head and the hands, and you can go make a 1-to-1 scale. You can 3D print feet for it if you're into that kind of thing. I have a head, hands, and feet set of resin for a life-size Yoda that I have yet to put together. I am looking forward to displaying the two of them together. But the fact that they did such a great seamless mold on the head alone is fantastic. And then when you top off that the hands don't have that, the nail paint job is very, very precise. And there's no stamp anywhere on the vinyl like copyright LucasArts or Mattel or any of that. It's not there. It's just a beautiful, seamless figure of the child. And it really does look great. Let's see if I can get his dome to get back in the container here. My dog likes it. But I think it's just probably one of the best offerings I've seen from Star Wars in terms of toys. It's basically a prop replica at this point. And, I looked at the Sideshow Collectibles ones, and that's gorgeous. And then Hot Toys is coming out with one as well. I haven't decided which one of the two is nicer. But I got to tell you, if you're just your average everyday prop collector and you're not looking for the super, super expensive $300, $400 replicas, you can't go wrong with this. $24.99 on DisneyStore.com. They're shipping now. They are appearing in some Targets and things like that. I highly recommend it. I really do. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous figure. I do recommend picking up some type of posable wire or a wire of your choosing to wrap around the innards so that you, and around the arms, so that you can add just that extra layer of posability. I mean, look at me. He's like, I want it. I want it. I want it. It's just, it's in quarantine when you're just stuck. It'll make for a lot of fun Instagram photos and stuff. I actually have a Mandalorian tracker beacon, and I have a Beskar steel ingot and some Mando armor pieces that I built that are not exactly accurate, but inspired by. And so just being able to put it with those pieces and take a photo and make the photos just a little more interesting. It's great. I put it right on top of the computer when I'm working today and kind of had him looking at me all day. It's a really good cheer you up kind of buy for the COVID season. And I think you'll see a lot of people in Comic-Con walking around with holders that have this. Yeah, it's great. I highly recommend it to all Star Wars fans, Mandalorian fans. See if I can get this thing back in his container a little bit. Yeah. Like I said, it displays beautifully. He looks great. The head shape, everything. It's a really solid offering from Mattel. I think this is probably a bigger victory for Mattel than it is for Star Wars, but I'm beside myself with joy at how cool this is. So there are some better reviews where people really go in and break it down. But as far as the detail really goes, I mean, like I said, if you really get in there and you look, you can see the texture on the skin. You can see the texture on the clothing. Now, of course, I'm going to go in and weather the clothes a little bit and make it look a little bit more beat up, a little dirty, some, mud spatter at the base level and things like that, just to give it something of a little bit more of a traveled look. But you almost don't even want to touch it. It actually is a very convincing prop right off the bat, as it is, with no work. With the wire mod, you've already, you haven't altered the actual piece yet, so that's a good modification that I recommend to anybody. I would not recommend using pipe cleaners. They're not going to be strong enough. I know that's the easiest go-to. If you're going to use pipe cleaners, you're probably going to have to wind 3 or 4 together into a spiral and then wrap it around the arms and the upper body in order to get that to hold. Pipe cleaners tend to be a very weak posing wire to use. There's better wire. Like I said, I like the industrial strength ties. I think they're great. But yeah, I don't think this needs a repaint. I don't think this needs weathering. I am going to weather the clothes ever so slightly because I'm just nitpicky like that. But I think this is a really solid offering from both Mattel and Star Wars. So if you're a Star Wars fan, you should have it anyway. If you're a Mando fan, you've got to have one. And honestly, if you were a Hasbro loyalist, you might want to consider jumping ship and just picking up the Mattel item just because it's a great job. It really does blow me away. The other thing that's kind of interesting, which I liked, is because this is predominantly a US and I guess Canada release, it's in French as well, which I find interesting. L'enfant, the infant. It has 2 sets of instructions, the English and the French. The instructions on the back here, they say, as one of the most feared bounty hunters in the galaxy, the Mandalorian never expected to be shielding this 50-year-old child from its rivals and enemies. Now you can protect this lovable little creature just like the Mandalorian does. And it has a nice little mug shot of the actual child, which is bold because usually when you put an actual picture of your figure, people are going to notice the differences. And like I said, this one does have differences, but it looks really good. I really do enjoy the build. I feel like they did a great job. It's cheap enough to be $24, but they did it economically in such a way that it still looks quality. And that's tricky to do when you're doing an economy thing. Usually cheap materials look cheap, and usually cheap stitching jobs and cheap builds look cheap, but this looks pretty solid. So really happy with it. If you didn't get your Baby Yoda yet, hopefully this video will convince you to go out and get one. It's definitely worth the money, and I'm just playing with it now. I'm posing the hand. Like I said, I like to have that palm up look, so he's sort of like chicky nuggies, So if you didn't get yours, I recommend getting yours. If I had to scale, I've never done like a scaling of like, what is this, a 1 through 10? I mean, For me, this is an example of a 10. I can't think, like, you could add the little rubber frog and you can add some of the, the necklace and all the little doodads, but in terms of the toy, you buy the toy for the toy and what you want the toy for. Will it stand? Will it display? Will it do? The only reason I would even go down to a 9 is that it's not posable without that extra wire wrap around, but the fact that it's such an easy mod to do. I think it's a 10. I wouldn't be happier with any mods on this other than the way it is, with the exception of that posability. I think it's fantastic, and I recommend it to any Star Wars fan. So get yourself your copy of The Child at DisneyStore.com or any place they sell Mattel figures. I believe, like I said, Target and Walmart are stocking them already. I have a feeling that they're going to be very, very hard to come by once COVID ends. So if you're hoping to just come across one in the store, it might be difficult to do so. Mattel is not known for stocking their stuff in excess, much like Hasbro. All the good stuff, they send about 2 or 3, and then the rest just sits there the whole time. And then if you're like where I am, you walk into Target, the same 5 a-holes are sitting there waiting for them to cut the Hasbro box so they can take all the Star Wars stuff. And no matter how many times you complain to the manager, they won't make those buttholes leave. So they just keep robbing the store of all the products so that the rest of us can't get any, and then they sell it for a 25 to 50% markup online. One of these days I'm going to take a look at what their cars are and probably inscribe upon them what I think of them. No, I wouldn't do that. That's illegal. But I do say that because there are really awful people who do that. You're not going to get luck finding them in the store. So hopefully this little reviews like this and the video and stuff will show you that it's definitely worth picking one up. Don't bother waiting to see what one looks like in a store. Go get one. Go online, order it, have it delivered. It's totally worth it. Like I said, I'm really happy with mine. You'll be happy with yours. And let it hang out with you all day while you eat chicken nuggets. Next video, we're going to look at Funko Pop exclusive Papa Nile.